All right, thank you, Stephanie. Hi, y'all. Welcome to today's meeting of the Live Music Fund Working Group, June 11th, 2020. To start off the meeting, Chaka has asked to share some words with us. Chaka, I yield the floor.
Greetings, everybody. I put together something as been having a lot of discussions in my community about many things over many years, and it's kind of coalesced into this moment. And I wrote something to address some of the frustrations and historic experiences that need to be addressed by the quote-unquote Austin music community. So I'm going to read that and let it be on record and let all that hear this know that it's time for change. Austin has a race problem. Now that some are beginning to realize this fact due to undeniable recent tragedies inflicted yet again by an oppressive and lethal apparatus of the state, it's time for Austin, Texas to look itself in the mirror. I have literally spent years at meeting after meeting, listening to rhetoric and dealing with marginalization for speaking out against the glaring inequities and double standards that I faced as a Black musician moving here 10 years ago. Despite all the nonsense, I moved forward into unbearably white spaces that showed little to no acknowledgement of the value that Black musicians played and continue to play in the music scene. Every single established Austin music organization that is not led by Black people has glaring holes in its ability to address and or acknowledge the historic underpinnings of racial discrimination in this city. There is no live music capital without Black musicians, period. There is no Stevie Ray Vaughan without Hosea Hargrove, T.D. Bell, Albert King, B.B. King, or Albert Collins. The list goes on. But who has the statue? There is no Antones without venues like the Victory Grill and Charlie's Playhouse, but whose venues remain and survive. To say that this is merely a matter of how things just happen to play out is to ignore the very monster that continues to live and breathe today. The Austin Music nonprofit structure's inability to speak on this monster marks their unequivocal failure to the Black community. Not one of them can say, I have not had some version of this conversation with them in the past. If Black musicians are the very foundation of this music scene, why are we the most ignored and the least funded, the least represented, the most misunderstood? Leaders are worried if there will be a music scene left after COVID, but what about the fact that there may not be a Black community left due to gentrification? Does anyone in the established and privileged Austin music industry care about that? Show me the actions that illustrate a clear commitment to Black lives. Matter is the minimum. Black lives eternal. Black lives forever. Black lives excel. But we remain out of sight, out of mind to the leadership of the Austin music industry. I can't tell you how many times I have sat and heard about how unaffordable it is for musicians, but these voices remain completely silent around issues of Black displacement. If the privileged can't afford to live, if the privileged can't afford to live, then what does that mean for the historically disenfranchised here? This city, much like the rest of the country, conveniently only sees the problem when white people are affected. Over the last 10 years, I have been called a nuisance, been told that I would be at more tables if I didn't talk about the things that I talk about publicly, been condescended to and told to be silent so I can sit at the adult table and more. I know they didn't mean adult though. They meant white. The table is full of comfortable, old white men that cannot handle criticism. They want us Black people to be quieter, Sit down, shut up, and take the crumbs that they offer. And when you cannot be controlled or paid off by the crumbs, the attempts at marginalization just take different forms. Spoken or unspoken, I have experienced them all and still rose through it. It's been a lonely walk. It's been an exhausting walk. Even more exhausting is the absolute fact that I am not the only one who has faced varying degrees of the same disgusting, condescended reality. The master plan of 1928 extracted basic human rights to water and ensured that Blacks would be out of sight and out of mind. Then the brutal segregation terms were followed up with economic displacement through gentrification. Nothing substantial has been done to address this issue. Nothing substantial has been done to repair what was taken from Native Black Austin residents that made this culture what it is. Black music is the foundation of the live music capital. This is the unwritten story. The wealth and privilege shared by only a chosen few was built on the backs of Black genius. As such, this city needs to reinvest in its Black population. More specifically, I am calling for an investment in Black musicians and artists today. It's time for the city to reinvest in a community that laid the groundwork for much of the prosperity that white venue owners, promoters, theaters, and more have experienced over the last 50 years. It's a new day, and the old guard does not reflect the needs and moods necessary to lead us in the direction of change. We don't need to get token invites to share the stage on largely white bills curated by predominantly white music tastemakers. Everything we need to move forward is within our possession, except for the investment. That changes today. Moving forward, I am calling for 50% of the live music funds available to be allocated for a Black live music fund. This fund will be created to address and repair the historic neglect perpetuated by music leadership in Austin. Stewardship of this fund will be in the hands of Black people, and funds will be used to support, but not limited to, the following needs: the creation of a Black owned and run music venue, small grant funding for Black musicians and entrepreneurs to build sustainable platforms, development of technology for the promotion of Black music in Austin, online radio, streaming platforms, websites, funding for artist education, online and traditional, 75% of funds directly back to Native Black Austinites and Black organizations with 20 or more years of history living and serving in Austin. Finally, I am calling for Black and white musicians to step up and join me in pushing the quote unquote leadership in the city to put money where their mouths have been. Stand with me and call for reinvestment in Black musicianship via a Black Live Music Fund so that we can take back some of what has literally been stolen for generations. The time is now. If we aren't talking about financial investment, we literally aren't talking at all. In the name of Black lives, in the beautiful spectrum of American culture that was born directly from it, we demand change. There is no turning back to what was. There's only the promise of today.
I second that. I second that, third that, fourth that, and fifth that. It's time.
Thank you, Chaka. Any other comment?
Everybody on here, y'all gonna show who y'all are. Y'all gonna show what y'all about right now. Exposure is here. If y'all with it, we're gonna do it. And if not, we see what it is. Nothing personal. It's just real. It's history. It's nothing personal. And and it's 100. So we about to see what y'all about. We about to see if y'all with the progression of everybody.
Does anybody have any comment? Is there a motion here? I didn't hear a motion made on this. I definitely sympathize with the concerns, and I hear you.
I motioned to move on the setup of a Black Live Music Fund that supports the development and the movement of Black musicians in Austin.
750,000, 50%.
There's your motion. What are we doing?
Okay.
What's the motion on the table? Catlin?
Yes, there's a motion on the table to set up a separate, and I don't want to paraphrase here, but a separate and discrete Black Music Fund, Black Live Music Fund.
So I would second that being part of our agenda recommendation.
Absolutely. 100%. I'm sorry, I've got the radio stuff going on in the back, Chaka, but I've been saying yes along with you the whole time that you were talking. I 100% support everything you just said. Yes.
I don't know what number that is, but fourth. Fourth thing motion.
I mean, back and forth. Chaka, yes, absolutely. I'm sorry I can't say more right now, but yes.
Who's speaking?
That's Chris.
My question would be, is that within our purview to do, to create a separate live music fund? Isn't that what City Council does?
We make recommendations to City Council.
Well, actually, we're making recommendations to the Music Commission. Then the Music Commission makes recommendations to the City Council. So what I'm saying is,
don't tangle it up. You know how to make it happen. Don't tangle it up into the logistics. You know what it is. You know how to make that happen. The kid, you know how to make that happen, and you know how to word it to make it happen without tying it up, making it some convoluted, total crazy process. You know what it is. Right.
You agree or disagree on it?
I agree. There should be some dedicated funding for Black music.
He second that. Then he second that. Who else?
Well, I didn't second it. Somebody else already seconded it.
You know what I'm saying, the kid, man. We don't care about the Robert's rules right now, man. You support it or not?
Okay.
Well, just let's take a second. I already said I support it, but we still get to discuss it, Chaka.
No, we are discussing it, but we just
every time I try to discuss it, I'm being shut down.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, you voted against supporting the Live Music Fund as a music commissioner. This fund that you are asking money for, you and Charlotte both said you would not make recommendations.
That's totally incorrect.
Thank you.
That is actually not incorrect.
Go ahead, and tell them.
The commission voted for this.
We were concerned about building a $1.5 billion.
I just want to make that clear, though. The recommendation for this, you're the only two people that did not support it.
I'm telling you what I did not support.
Tell them.
I mean, you can tell all you want, but I'm telling you what the record says.
No, I'm telling you what the record says also, and I
am absolutely in support of
building $1 billion convention center and basically holding the music communities hostage. If we did not go along with that, there are better ways to finance music in this city.
Right,
now,
in other ways.
As a member of Austin Samba, which is an art form that has come from slaves in Brazil, I mean, there's absolutely no way I would not support what Chaka is saying.
I support what Chaka is saying.
Is incredibly.
Okay, good. So that's good.
I support what Chaka is saying. I just want to state, when we were at the Music Commission meeting, what you said on the record and Charlotte was that you could not vote yes for this because you didn't have enough information. Chaka did not vote yes because he felt like his voice was not heard in the Visitor Impact Task Force.
But what does that matter to what we said today?
Exactly.
What does that matter to what Chaka said today? What's the relevance of that?
It's on the record, bro. It's on the record. You got it on the record.
It needs to be on the record that moving forward, we need everybody to support this. If we're going to do this, it has to be done the right way.
That's not a given. That's not a given. We don't support it until we're supported. So do you support us? And are you going to come through and support us for real? That's when we support you.
Okay.
We got an army.
I definitely support funding it as put forth. I'd like to see more on what the mechanics of that look like. We've just spent 3 months, 4 months working on a structure, and I definitely support.
We spent hundreds of years dealing with apathy
Okay.
and oppression. 3 months.
I'm talking to the here and now of what we've been working on.
I'm talking to the here and now
I
as well.
support what you're saying, and I support equity overlay as you're proposing. I just want to make sure that as we move forward on this, that I'm going to be looking to you, Chaka, to bring recommendations to this group on what that structure looks like and how it can be framed within the broader construct of what we're working on.
Oh, that's no problem. I got plenty of support for that. We'll handle that.
Yeah, we on that. That's 100.
That's not a problem.
So that I'm clear, Chaka, what you asked for was a separate live music fund, and that's why I was asking, because if we're just going to build it into this live music fund, I can support that. If we're talking about creating a separate live music fund, I need to be clear on how that works.
Let me figure that out later. I'm just saying a Black Live Music Fund. That's what I'm saying.
That I can absolutely support.
All right. I think, is anybody in disagreement with support with voicing support for the creation or the furtherance of a Black Live Music Fund? Hearing none, let the record be shown.
Be clear on 50. Be clear on 50% though. Let's be clear on what the ask was. Let's be clear on 50%.
Well, no
consolation, no crumbs. Be clear on this.
No.
So, Chaka, do you want to restate the motion? Can you restate the motion so we're clear on what we're all voting on?
I have not written out a motion, so this is a clumsy motion. But what I'm suggesting to put it into motion is the creation of a Black Live Music Fund, which will create a Black-owned and run music venue, small grant funding for Black musicians and entrepreneurs to build sustainable platforms, development of technology for the promotion of Black music in Austin, online radio, streaming platforms, website, funding for artist education, online and traditional, 75% of funds directly back to native Black Austinites and Black organizations, means Black people who have lived here for 20 plus years and are serving and living in this city.
So you're asking for 75% of the hotel occupancy tax
I said 50% of live music funds, and that might not. Maybe I need to think about whether it's this fund or another fund created. I said 50% because I was talking about 750,000. If it's 1.5 million, 750,000 was in my mind. Regardless, yes, a Black Live Music Fund created with substantial funds from the city. That is also in the hands of Black people.
Frank?
Yeah, I support all that. I think with the caveat that you just mentioned, Chaka, that we allow some flexibility in terms of how that's structured, because a little paper that says that the Live Music Fund isn't going to be available to us. If we just look at the music fund, basically getting, nothing for a while. Rather, we look at something that we can structure that brings in money that can bring about a revenue stream for Black music. And I want to add now, my amendment to your 50% will go for Latinos, which is over 80% of the population here.
We're not going to figure it out today. The motion is that if we agree that there needs to be one set up, then we can come back to the drawing board with plenty of ideas and concepts for how that can be constructed.
Well, you heard my amendment. I didn't hear.
No, I didn't hear.
Your general.
You're breaking.
Latinos either have.
Frank, you're breaking up pretty bad. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Same.
But I think what you're trying to say is if we take it if we create a separate a Black Music Fund from this fund, the problem with this fund is it's already weak, and that we should at least consider looking for another bucket of money somewhere else that could help embolden a Black Music Fund even more.
what I was saying, yeah. I'm sorry.
And that was one of the reasons. That was one of the reasons that I asked about, are we talking about a separate fund or a part of this fund? Because we know from the current projections that this fund isn't going to grow any for at least 4 to 5 years or more. And we also know that the city has some other dedicated funding for music that has not been allocated yet. So there's currently $3.5 million that has not been allocated yet. And for disaster relief, that we might be able to get the Music Commission to take a portion of that money and put towards the creation of a live music venue for Black music. That would be absolutely amazing. So
we want that, and we want 50% of this fund, because we don't want to be put in a position where games are being played. So we asking for 50% of this fund, and if we can figure out more from other buckets, we'll do that too. But that's what we asking for today, is 50% of this fund. We don't want to tap dance around that. This fund.
I can't support 50% of this fund being set aside by itself, because there are a lot of things that this money can be helpful for. I absolutely think that you can get more money if we do this the right way. We can get way more than 50%.
So if you tap dancing. So if you don't support 50, what you support 55, 60? We're not going lower than 50%, bro. Because if it wasn't for us, it wouldn't be no music, period. Let's get down and look at what happened in history in this city. So if there's money there, we want 50% of this fund. Of this one right here.
There's no there's no live music capital without Black lives. None.
And we always get left out. We always get left out and played and ran with this process and procurement situation of how to find something separate somewhere else. We'll find that too. But we want 50% of this one. Because our contribution in this city with music is well over 90%. If y'all want to pull up the number, the historical facts, everything, you understand that this was built by us. So I feel like 50% is being very moderate.
It was sold by others.
We matter.
It was sold by others, but we built it. It was sold by other people, but we built it.
So my comments on supporting the Live Music Fund, or a fund for the Black community, obviously is built on systemic bias and oppression. We have, as a native Austinite, experienced just in the last 10 years, the Black community's gone from 13% down to 7%. So there is not enough political capital at City Hall, with one gentleman's agreement Black council member making this ask. I don't think Chaka and Nuke are coming from a place of insecurity as much as fact. The basis, as Nuke pointed out, 100% of the music played on these stages are Black rooted. White privilege, Black marginalization has certainly occurred in the city, or we wouldn't have a diminishing Black population. What's going to happen in East Austin?
That's why the numbers have gotten lower, because of that.
Yeah, and we're seeing that today with the $1.5 million for the musicians. Almost more of the folks in the hip hop community that I'm working with, and we have a list of 350 folks now, Black musicians. Almost all of them are unqualified to receive this money. So what's going to happen in 2 weeks when the money's given out? We're going to look at a 3%, 5% maybe went to Black musicians. Okay, tiny sliver.
Tell them to apply, man. Tell them to apply and get to the point of being judged. Tell them to apply.
Right. Well, they can't. They're in Pflugerville, Maynard, Hutto. They're
displaced. Well, that's a very good point.
So they're not here. They can't apply for the district money. They're in. I just got off with Malik. He's in Cedar Park, and so they're out. Almost all the hip hop community, right? A lot of them, because it's going to get worse. And I'm dealing right now with Jackie and the issues there, you know, that have been raised with, you'll be seeing shortly. I am not Black and haven't experienced a day being Black in the city. If I had, I would be out of my skin right now over the historical culpability of good intentioned people that are perpetuating exclusion. So if we don't, in this
And ill-intentioned.
What's that?
And ill-intentioned. I have been straight outcasted, and you really have not done much to help me and support me as an individual, Gavin. And you have been a part of that as well, man. So I appreciate what you're saying, but you're also a part of this as well.
Yeah, I am part of the
established music community. Yeah, absolutely. And you've received money to help the situation, and Black communities have seen very little of that funding.
Right. EQ Austin hasn't. We don't get city funding, so that.
No, you got money from Gary Keller.
Very little. Right.
You got something. We didn't get any.
Understood.
There's no Black-led organization that got any money from Gary Keller.
Point taken. Point taken. So I am part of that collective, and you're right. Bring that point up. So again, my resume for the last 40 years in EDI is there. But
we're not talking about resumes. We're talking about action. We're talking about activity. We're not talking about resumes right now.
Okay. Again, I agree. And the action, as you're saying, that needs to take place right now at this hour is to preserve the Black footprint in Austin music. Because when we're all gone in 20 years or whatever the time is, things will be settled into a new community that's chiefly Latino, 60% Mexican American. And then what dynamic is introduced in that as well is another issue. But if we don't support something right now for Black music, that if you can imagine it, it's just going to get worse for young Black artists to call this community home.
I'd like to make a motion. I would like to motion that Chaka become the new chair of the Live Music Fund Working Group. And that you can collaborate and coordinate with Catlin on some of the stuff and his notes, but perhaps maybe this would be best run, by Chaka and let you take the full lead on this.
I'm not sure I'm prepared to do that. I'm not sure how interested I am in that. I am definitely interested in making sure that money goes to the Black community to support the growth and aspirations of Black people in Austin. I'm not born and raised here, but I'm familiar with the struggle of attempting to make a way in this racist city. And the folks that are here are so affected by the racism that they don't believe anything is possible. They believe it's over, a lot of them. And we have to restore faith in them, and we have to also take it upon ourselves as music leaders to bring them back and to give them something to have hope in and faith in.
Then I would withdraw that motion and instead make a motion then that we take a week, to table what you're talking about and let you come back with some absolute, as you put it, more concrete action items that we can take for this Live Music Fund Working Group that would be something that we could absolutely discuss piece by piece.
I'm okay with that motion.
Okay, so I hear that everybody is generally supportive of creation of a Black Live Music Fund. That motion is there. We're gonna table for a week for Chaka to come back with some hard recommendations on that. I would also suggest that you take this to the Music Commission, as any funds that we're talking about that are outside of the hotel occupancy tax, which is Chapter 351, with the exception potentially of recommendations for trying to find philanthropic development as part of the creation of a live music fund, are kind of outside the purview of this working group as was originally brought forth by the Music Commission. And I say that just out of the sincerity that understanding that Chapter 351 is a state statute, and ultimately this fund has to be in compliance with all the state statutes. I'm 100% in support of a strong equity and inclusion overlay as part of this fund. And I think that there can be more and there should be more, but that has to necessarily come from the Music Commission.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, if there's any way that we can create the Black Music Fund outside of the state law, so that you're not having to adhere to every single thing promoting tourism, so that we could actually do some real investment in the community to really uplift the community, even if it doesn't affect tourism. And that is, and you know, seriously, Chaka, one of the main things that I'm trying to convey when I say, let's not try to take it from this 50% of this fund in that way, because every single thing will be scrutinized under this law. But if we come out as a united front and say that we are demanding the city of Austin create a separate fund for the development of Black music and the sustainability of Black music in Austin, that's not tied to that.
I just want to be clear, not to diminish what you're saying, but all music in Austin is Black. Everything that's played is Black. It comes from Black.
You and I both know that, but
that's not the story the city tells, and that's not the story the city remembers. So we want to reframe that. It's all Black music.
I agree with you.
The people playing it are not, and the people getting opportunities are not Black.
And I agree with you on that. Absolutely. So I would recommend, if there's somebody that would second that motion, for us to then, you know, bring this information back in a week where we could have some real solid action items for us to discuss on how we could help recommend that this fund be created, whether it's out of this fund or a separate fund. I would absolutely support that.
Just as a point of procedure, we don't need a motion to bring forth future agenda items. We can just put it on for next week's agenda in our next conversation, and ask that Chaka come back with more details on his vision for an equity overlay for this fund, and so that we have since the beginning of this conversation been very clear that we want to see equity, genre diversity, inclusion amongst the whole community as part of what our recommendation is. And I look to you, Chaka, and your passion on this to bring forward what you think that can look like. And I thank you for that. And we will put that for next week's agenda. And Charlotte?
I just wanted to make the comment that if we're talking about finding this funding in a different place, that concerns me a little bit, because we know that we have this money. And if we're saying like, oh, well, let's leave this alone and we'll go find it some other mysterious place. I mean, we're fighting so hard for music funding as it is. And I would be concerned that that would cause this idea to just get kicked down the road and eventually it would go nowhere. So I would definitely support allocating, you know, a portion of the live music fund specifically to what Chaka is talking about. And I just, as a music community as a whole and a city as a whole, and we're talking about tourism as well, I really don't see how supporting Black artists, Black musicians is bad for any of that. I think that is really good for the city of Austin as a whole.
I agree. I have no qualms with that. I just understand that Chapter 351 has specific uses that are outlaid by state law. And you and Chaka as vice chair and other music commissioners here have a duty to bring forward direction to this group that you formed from your commission.
I'm aware of that.
So I just want to be clear what our purview is versus what the purview of the music commission is.
It's clear.
All right. Any further comments on this before we go on to the agenda? Okay, thanks.